Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Hamline Leo Lecture, Saving Endangered Species in the Cultural Traditions in Hawaii. My name is Molly Glevy. I work in the Alumni Relations Office here at Hamline, and I'm so excited to welcome two colleagues, Taylor Fredin and John Shepard of the Center for Global Environmental Education, to today's Leo Lecture. Before we get started, I will go through just a few housekeeping items, and then I will hand the reins over to Taylor and John. And if you've joined a Leo lecture before, you know how these things go. We have these about once a month, and it's just a pleasure to be able to spotlight such really interesting work that our either Hamline colleagues, faculty and staff, or alums are doing. So a few warm-up items. As you likely know, participants, we've been doing this for some time, right? You will be muted and your camera is off for today's presentation. If you have a question for either Taylor or John, please use the Q&A icon in your Zoom dashboard. They'll answer questions at the end, but go ahead and drop those questions in as they come to mind. You don't need to wait till the end to put them into the Q&A. They'll find them. If you have any questions about logistics or anything you want to share with us, go ahead and use the chat icon. We'll find those things wherever you put them in. So go ahead and do that. And with that, I'm going to give just a brief introduction of Taylor and John, and I'm going to let them really say more about their background at Hamline and their work in the context of this project they're going to speak about today. So my colleagues, Taylor Fredin, Associate Multimedia Producer, and John Shepard, Assistant Director, Associate Professor, and Director of Multimedia Development. Again, both from the Center of Global Environmental Education here at Hamline. And with that, I'll let the two of you take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks, Molly. Wonderful to be able to spend some time sharing, taking you to Hawaii this cold winter morning. We're going to do a little virtual tour of places and projects that we are working on. So hang on, I will share my screen and we will get going here. Okay. So somebody tell me if you don't see our screen. Does that look good, Taylor? All right, great. So this opening photo is taken on the north shore of the island of Kauai, and that is where we kind of first landed as we began developing projects and ideas for our work in Hawaii. It's a spectacular place, and we've been undertaking work there. Now it's at least a dozen years. I don't remember exactly how long. It's kind of a long and winding story as to how we got there. Basically, the director of our center, Tracy Fredin's wife, is a faculty member at University of St. Thomas, and she had a project, a J-term project of taking students to Hawaii, and because Tracy was going along with her, that kind of got us a foothold in the islands. And one thing has led to another. And we've been really honored to do some really interesting work with Native Hawaiian communities, groups that are working to save endangered species and so forth. And we'll be telling you about that today. A little more background just about our center. So we are part of the School of Education and Leadership at Hamline. We've been around since 1990. And kind of our guiding vision for our center is to foster environmental literacy and stewardship in citizens of all ages. And that's a very broad and I think inspiring vision that guides our work. It really takes us all over the country, and we're very outward facing. We do a lot of work with K-12 teachers, being part of the School of Education, but also develop resources for K-12 students and the general public, as you will see. And this work that we do really, for us, has raised a couple of important questions that we think about. I just want to share those briefly. The first one, given our world today and how completely distracted so many people are by media overload, the question is, how do you get people's attention in this world of ours? And I love to share this quote by an observer of Western culture. Is there anywhere on earth exempt from these swarms of new media? Well, that statement comes from the 16th century by a Dutch philosopher Erasmus, and he was talking about books. So that was soon after the Gutenberg press and was invented, and books were a new thing. So if he was overwhelmed in his time, think about us today. According to Facebook, between 1,500 and 15,000 stories could appear in the average user's feed each time they log in. So how do you get people's attention in this world that we're living in? And the second question is, how do you move people from being uninformed about something to becoming knowledgeable and then toward their taking action? So that really gets at the heart of our vision, which is about stewardship, ultimately engendering environmental literacy, understanding, and moving towards stewardship. So the projects we're going to share with you today you could think of it as our answer to these questions, which has really evolved. The strategies that we're engaged with have evolved since the beginnings of our center. I've been there since 1996, if I'm remembering right. It'll be 30 years coming up here. And over that period of time, we've been thinking a lot and working around those questions. So let's take you to Hawaii. Here's a map of the Hawaiian Islands. The ones where we are most involved are in yellow. So Kauai originally, which is the far northwest, Lanai, Maui, and Hawaii Island. Oahu is where Honolulu is, the capital of the state. And we've certainly spent time there, but we're just not as active there. And there's a small island to the west of Kauai called Niihau, which is privately owned, and it's a very interesting place. And it turns out a lot of our work has strong connections to the island of Niihau. One of the things I'll mention, just which is so interesting to me, as you may know, the Hawaiian Islands are formed by a geologic hotspot, a volcanic hotspot in the Pacific crust way at the bottom of the ocean. And so lava comes spewing up out of this hotspot. But the tectonic plate, the Pacific plate, is moving to the northwest. And so the hotspot doesn't move, but it operates irregularly. And so an island gets formed, and then the plate moves forward, and then a few million years later, another island is formed. So as you travel between the islands, you're either going forwards or backwards in time. Kauai is the oldest in the main island group. It's 5 million years old. The Hawaii Island is still being born. A few other things. It is the most remote archipelago in the world, which has many implications in terms of the natural environments and species that you find there. I just mentioned it's 5 million years old. And it's still being born, the island or the state as a whole. So the main islands, the oldest is 5 million years, Kauai. And as you may know, active volcanoes still on Hawaii Island. Hawaii is also considered to be ground zero for endangered and invasive species in the US. And the islands are incredibly lush, as you'll see from these images. Rainforest environments, just dense forests, with fascinating endemic or natural species, but due to incursions or just interactions with people from all over the world, a number of invasive species have been introduced, which are combining with other forces to create large numbers of endangered species. Also, since 1970s, there's really been a cultural and linguistic renaissance in Hawaii. It was a distinct sovereign kingdom, really taken over by the United States in a coup d'etat in the late 1800s. Eventually became a state, but there are strong, great deal of pride and in Hawaiian culture and a real renaissance. So we're kind of part of all of these things, all of these elements that make Hawaii such a distinctive place. And the work that we're doing there involves these four main strategies as part of our outreach and educational efforts. So on the left there, you see a multimedia gallery kiosk. These are large touchscreen interactive museum quality kiosks, essentially a museum in a box that play videos, interactive panoramas, interactive multimedia of different kinds. So we have a network of about 25 of these on the three main islands that we're working on. We also have a smartphone app that we've developed with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on the island of Kauai. And then we've repurposed a lot of our media resources and created an online classroom learning program for Hawaiian schools. We also partner with a wide variety of folks, including PBS Hawaii, and they have a wonderful series of programs called Hikino, which are short news programs made by students in schools throughout all the islands. And we've worked closely with them and have access to a lot of the resources, a lot of the videos they have created. Some of our other partners, briefly, were over the last 12 or so years, we've been busy there. The Kauai Museum was one of our original main partners. You can see several federal agencies there, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, National Park Service, NOAA. I mentioned PBS Hawaii. Kamehameha Schools is a very large educational organization that's active throughout the islands, that's actually comes from Hawaiian royalty. It extends back. National Tropical Botanical Garden, and then several organizations, a number of them actually, that are involved in working to conserve either endangered species or environments or both. So that's just kind of a few of our partners. And with that, Taylor's going to walk us through some of the work that we are doing in a charter school. So Taylor, you take it away. I will advance the slides.
Thanks, John. Aloha, o Taylor to'u inoa. Hi, my name is Taylor Fredin, and we've been working with Kekula Niihau o Kekaha Charter School in Kekaha, Kauai for the last 7 years. In the winter of 2018, I think, yeah, February of 2018, the entire staff, including teachers, came over to Minnesota, and we did a Rivers Institute. Oh, actually, I misspoke. The curriculum team came over in February to work with us to develop materials, and then the entire team came over the next summer to work with Minnesota teachers at the Rivers Institutes, beginning our partnership to create curriculum materials for this school in the Niihau dialect of Hawaiian. They have around 60 students at the school from preschool to 12th grade. Their mission is to preserve and perpetuate Niihau dialect and culture. When we started this project 7 years ago, there was one book in Olelo Niihau, and that was the Bible. It was translated by missionaries, and otherwise it was an oral tradition. So things were passed down orally in these long chants. Everything at the school was either oral, or the teachers would put Post-it notes across the bottom of books in their dialect of Hawaiian so that they could have materials that were in Olelo Niihau. So through this project, we've now published over 400 books in Olelo Niihau, most of which have been written by students at the school. So this is a school picture from this year. Those are our friends and colleagues in Hawaii. And the other photo is the CG team, along with some of the staff members being honored at the school a couple of years ago. So you can go ahead, next slide, John. I'll tell you quickly about Niihau and Kauai and the relationship. Traditionally, the two islands were kind of functioned as one. They were under the same monarchy, and people would go back and forth between the two. In the 1800s, the Sinclair Robinson family purchased Niihau, and they allowed the native Hawaiians to continue to live there and live traditionally and speak their language, which is different from the rest of Hawaii, where their language was banned and you would get in trouble. Like kids at school would get their knuckles slapped with rulers if you spoke Hawaiian. And so on Niihau, that language was preserved, and people still spoke that language as their first language. Fast forward to today, around 100 people still live there. Some of the families we work with in Keikaha go back and forth, and some just stay on Kauai. So around 200 to 400 people, depending on which estimates you look at, still speak this dialect of Hawaiian. And that makes that work that we're doing there incredibly important to, like they say, preserve and perpetuate that culture and language. Go ahead, John. And then next is a video.
Since staff at Kekula Niihau o Kekaha have written and published more than 400 books in the Niihau dialect of the Hawaiian language.
Writing books is actually really fun because you get to do all these excursions to find out research. You get to go on all these apps and other stuff to find research for it.
You have to write about will we perpetuate Olelo Niihau or not? And I said to perpetuate.
I like when we read to our parents because we feel like really special to when we make those books.
Kekula Niihau o Kekaha is the only Hawaiian language Niihau dialect immersion school in the state. Its mission is to strengthen and perpetuate the Niihau dialect of Hawaiian among the children and youth of the Niihau community on Kauai. In 2018, students and staff began writing and publishing books, creating a large library of reading materials for students.
In 2016, I was a new principal. It was important for me to understand what our community expected of me as the new leader, what they had envisioned for their own children, also what the children had envisioned for themselves.
Following a gathering of stakeholders in 2016, it was clear that Olelo Niihau was the priority.
At that time, there were 0 materials published in our language. A lot of it was handwritten and or delivered orally. It was important for me to begin building the foundation of a program.
They partnered with Hamline University in Minnesota and began their journey of writing and publishing resources in Olelo Niihau.
We first established Kealapito, which is our syllabary foundation, and following Kealapito, we were able to now publish resources, so publish books and other curricular resources.
Each student in preschool through 12th grade writes and publishes at least 1 book each year. The younger students get help from their teachers.
Themes change every year, so we pick different forms of and genres of writing. We focus on different topic areas. This year, we landed at persuasive writing, so we've done things from informational to fiction, to journaling, to autobiographies, biographies, and this year we wrote persuasive writing. But it's important to also see our language written in different forms, not only to challenge our students in different writing in different forms, but also to ho'opa'a that and make sure that, you know, as time passes on and people pass on, that it's now being kept in malamaia in all of these books that are being published. So we also have a committee that authors what we are referring to as a legacy text. The text is focused. We have specific focuses for each year, and it's grounded in Niihau values, hana Niihau, or the things that are special and the practices that are special to Poe Niihau, such as lei making, net fishing, farming. As the students are reading these books, regardless if they've been to Niihau or not, through the imagery and through the storytelling, they're able to see themselves in that, continue to be proud of who they are.
Their goal is to publish 1,000 books in Olelo Niihau, ensuring that the Niihau dialect continues to thrive for generations to come.
Aloha ta pola poke.
So as Kumutia said, this is the Ke Alapito, kind of similar to their alphabet. And we worked with them to develop this chart. Our graphic designer worked very closely with them, Lee Simmons, to create all of these images that have now been used in a plethora of different ways. They wrote a song, their alphabet song. I won't sing it for you today, but it's very cute. But the dialect is very similar to Standard Hawaiian. They have a T, whereas Standard Hawaiian only has the K. So like Ke Alapito would be Ke Alapiko in Standard Hawaiian. And then there's also different vocabulary for different words. Some people say it's more similar to like Tahitian, like Tahiti. Anyway, the Ke Alapito was very fun to make, and it's very fun to sing. Anyway, John, you can go to the next. These are our student books. So I've gone over a few times each year to work with all of the students from preschool to 12th grade to write these books. Each year we have a different theme. And sometimes we take field trips to the botanical gardens or the beach, but always with a Hawaiian-centric theme. I believe the top one was a trip to the museum, the Kauai Museum, who we've worked with quite extensively as well, where each student chose one Hawaiian artifact and wrote a fictional story about that artifact. And those turned out just so cool and very cute. So I'll work with the students. I obviously don't speak Niihau, but their teachers do, and I help to facilitate the process of making and writing these books. And we print with a small kind of micro-publishing framework, 10 books for the school, and then they can later be used as curriculum in the classrooms the next years. You can go ahead next, John. We also each year create one legacy book, and that's written by a committee of teachers and our staff working together. We have a weekly meeting where we check in and work on this process of writing one legacy book. And each year we choose a different theme. This one was about the bookmaking process, which was very cool. So I'm depicted in this imagery. Working with the students at the beach on our books. But they're just beautiful, and we print them, they're hardcover books, and they're used as the main curricular texts moving forward in the classroom. So that's been incredibly fun and cool. Next. And last, each year, at the end of the bookmaking process, once we have printed the students' books, we invite the community in to authors' events, and each student reads their books to their parents, their grandparents, other community members who have been invited in. And it really is a fun celebration. It gives them a lot of pride, some public speaking skills, but it's just a wonderful way to celebrate the work and make each student really feel that they are an author and that they are a part of this process in writing down, preserving, perpetuating into the future their Niihau dialect and culture. And with that, I'll turn it over to John to show a few other materials.
So to go along with all the great work that Taylor's doing and the publishing of the printed books, we also develop a lot of media resources. So this screen shows is essentially an online library of all of the legacy books Taylor was talking about. So again, the ones were written by the teachers, illustrated by our graphic designer. And you can see each row, the different colored thumbnails there, those are representing different reading levels of the same book. So the first book was actually the story of Noah's Ark, which interestingly, that was the first book that they wanted to do as a legacy book. And so that was fun. And interestingly, also, all of the imagery in that book is Hawaiian. So all the animals going into the ark are Hawaiian animals. The ark itself is a double-hulled Polynesian canoe and so forth. So creating digital versions of these books so they can be used online. And then we have teachers in the school read the books aloud, record that so that you can hear the language being spoken. So that's one whole type of resource we've created. This is an interactive learning program that we developed with the school, and I'm not going to dive into it, but each of those calabashes at the bottom is a link that leads to media content on those different topics. So these are all topics that are very important to the cultural history of both Kauai and Niihau, including on the right-hand one, Mo'olelo Niihau, are stories that the students have developed that are accessible that way. And then we've developed language learning games. So this is, again, I won't show this. We're happy to share some of these links if anybody wants to explore these. These are interactive games for learning fundamental vocabulary. We have jigsaw puzzles. You can hear. We have memory games and other kinds of games as well. So those have been really fun to make and extensively used by the students. And then lastly, we have developed some media stories that are documenting, essentially short documentary videos about projects that the schools are involved with. So they usually have a year-long service learning project. And I'm going to play a short video that we just developed within the last year that tells the story of what that project is about.
Pu'upakai is the reef area between what is known as St. Teresa's Beach and Davidson Beach more contemporarily. This area actually has provided for our community for generations. The reef itself is home to limu, home to various aquatic life that locals and people from this area have come to gather throughout the years. Pu'upu'u, literally translating it, it could be mounds of salt, which some kupuna have said that this area was known to have mounds of salt accumulate when the reef was exposed. These days, on very low tide, the reef is exposed. I think we'll be able to see Pu'upu'upakai in its entirety today. Yeah. Our school has been for the last year visiting Pu'upu'upakai. This is our kai-based site where our students have learned not only its original place name, but they were able to reconnect with this area, to inventory aquatic life on the reef. And then we've also included cultural practitioners, so our ohana who have gathered here for many generations have also come out to spend time with our haumana and basically share knowledge, exchange cultural knowledge of the reef and the surrounding area.
So I'm going to pass this off back again to Taylor in just a second, but I cut the video short a little bit in the interest of time. And just to point out that this project that Kumutia, the principal, was talking about there at this historic site, this reef, is really part of an effort of the school and the community to reclaim places, important cultural sites in the region that have been lost through time. Their names, their original Hawaiian names have been lost. And so the focus on the name, Pu'upu'upakai, is the name of that reef and that beach area. And they're working to eventually their goal is to establish signage along roads and so forth that will identify for people that live there and for visitors what these places are. So that's an example of one of the service projects that have been done. So I will pause there. Taylor, go ahead and jump back in.
Sure. So we'll kind of switch gears here from talking about our work with the school and native Niihauans to our work with endangered seabirds and forest birds. The Hawaiian Islands are a unique place for seabirds. Seabirds spend most of their lives fully at sea. They have kind of these wonderful adaptations for life at sea, like a special gland behind their eyes that desalinates water, and their wings are long, thin, that are designed to help them soar on wind instead of needing to flap. So they rarely flap, and they soar on these wind currents for hundreds of miles at a time. They can even sleep while they're flying and soaring out at sea. But they come back to Hawaii annually to nest and have their young. And it's an incredible site, as John was saying, out at Kilauea Lighthouse Point. There are all of these wonderful nests, and you can really get up close and personal. And we've done lots of work with the Kilauea Point Wildlife Refuge and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to create educational materials on seabirds. So I'll share a little bit more about seabirds, some threats that they face, and some of the work that we are doing with seabirds. And with that, we can go to the next slide. So this is the molie, the Laysan albatross, and these are fascinating birds. They're huge. They have wingspans up to 11 feet. They can spend years at sea. When they're their fledglings, sorry, first take their first flights, they can spend up to 4 years without ever returning to land. But when they do return to land, they have one mate, they mate for life, and the two mates work very closely together to raise their chicks. They spend about 6 months with them, and they'll take turns flying out to sea in search of food. In the summer months, one individual can fly round trip to Alaska to bring one meal back to their chick and regurgitate it for them. And so they'll do that. One will fly up to Alaska, get a meal, fly back, feed its chick. The other will do the same. And they're just incredible birds, and they nest at that Kilauea Lighthouse, Kilauea Point site. Next slide. Seabirds are incredibly important to Hawaiian culture and the Hawaiian Islands in general. They're the first colonizers of the islands, so their poop, their guano, mixed with the Hawaiian rock and actually formed that first soil in the Hawaiian Islands. And there's tons of myths, legends, and stories about these birds. The iwa down at the bottom, iwa means thief in Hawaiian. And those birds rarely hunt on their own. They just fight other seabirds for their catch. And the uaukani has this wonderful ghostly moan that it makes from its nests. And there are great myths about the ghost of uaukani. This image is one of our friends, Sabra, releasing a chick that had been injured back into the wild with chants and songs and prayers. Really, traditionally, the seabirds were great help in navigation at sea, as well as pointing out where fish were. If the seabirds were diving, that meant a school of fish was near. And John, you can next slide. Now I'll talk about the a'o. A'o are an endangered shearwater. And I'll talk about two threats, artificial light and predation. Next. Artificial light is a huge problem for seabird fledgling chicks. When they're taking their first flight, they take it at night and they're guided by the moon, and the artificial light really disorients them, and they end up down on the ground where they're susceptible to cats, rats, dogs, cars being run over. Next slide, John. An interesting play of culture and birds was the Friday night football. It was a very controversial issue. The Friday night lights were disorienting the birds, and it was banned due to them being endangered species. And people were very angry. You can see this guy has a shirt that says "Buck the Birds," and people would, the whole stands would wear these shirts, and people really thought that they were choosing the birds over their children, because then the kids would have to play during the day in the hot heat, and they were very angry. They've tried a few things to get Friday night football back, including shielded lights, and also timing the games so that they're earlier in the season or later in the season when those birds are not taking their first flights. And next slide. There's a lot of solutions they've put into place on the islands, including these bird hotels. So if you find a grounded seabird and it's in distress, they have instructions on the Save Our Shearwaters websites. You pick them up with a little towel and you can drop them off at these bird hotels that are at every single fire station around the islands. So that's if you have found a grounded seabird. They've also put in some guidelines for your house lights to be pointed down. Hotels have tried to work with regulations to have less lighting at night or more safe lighting at night. Next. And now I'll talk about our work at Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuge. This is an absolutely gorgeous place. In these cliffs, there are thousands upon thousands of seabirds nesting, flying, diving. You can go out to that lighthouse and there'll be seabirds just swarming around you. It's a wonderful and amazingly cool place. And they've done a lot of work to protect birds from the next threat, which, John, you can change the slide, which is invasive predators. Cats, rats, pigs, and sometimes dogs are all large predators of these birds, and none of those are native. They would not have had any native predators. And so, next slide. At Kilauea, they've put in this predator exclusion fence, and it's been very successful in keeping out these predators from getting into the nests and burrows of the seabirds. They've planted lots of native plants and really restored this area. And with that, I think, John, I'll hand it back over to you. Oh, nope, I had one more. Oh, I guess our work with them has been to educate both public and school groups, tourists, locals alike. We've created a wonderful kiosk program that plays in several locations at the Kilauea Lighthouse, as well as on a smartphone app to both educate about threats and solutions to these birds, problems with these birds, but also what makes these birds so special.
Great. Okay, so now we're going to go into the forests. And this is another bird story. The forest birds of Kauai and the Hawaiian Islands are extraordinary. And this one you see right here is a favorite. I'm going to play a short video that introduces the forest birds, a little background on their natural history and some of the threats they face. And then we'll say more about what's happening.
The one bird everyone wants to see is the emu. Every time I see it, I cannot get enough of it. Red, crimson, bright crimson bird with a long, decurved bill. The call is just captivating. And when you see it feeding on a flower and then goes to the next one and does the same thing, you can watch it all day. It's really nice to see.
So Niihau is our smallest Kauai forest bird. They weigh, if you put 4 pennies in your hand or 10 paper clips in your hand, that's what an Niihau weighs, like 8 or 9 grams. They're bright lemon drop yellow. They're adorable. The Hawaiian Islands were colonized by birds, plants, and insects. And that was what was here for millions and millions of years. And there's only 3 ways things arrive in Hawaii because of the isolation of Hawaii. One is the wind, one is the waves, and one is the water. So you're either a strong flyer, you get blown here in the wind, or you're a strong swimmer. That means a lot of things didn't get here. No mammals, no reptiles. So the forest birds likely came here on the wind, blown off course on the wind. And it was likely the ancestor to one of the main forest bird families here in Kauai was a rosy finch, like your house finch that you see around your houses anywhere in North America. And it just got blown off course in a big storm, arrived here and had these uninhabited islands to explore and explode into. And because there were so many different niches here in the Hawaiian Islands that weren't being occupied by anything else, that one species turned into 50 different species, more than 50 different species of honey creeper with all sorts of different beak types and colors and sizes that filled all these different niches. So some of them picked fruit, and some of them ate insects, and some of them ate seeds. Some of them do what woodpeckers do on the mainland. And they just exploded. That's what we call an adaptive radiation.
So I'm going to keep moving along here. That's a video we produced working with the Kauai Forest Bird Preservation Group. The work that they do, this is a kind of a rain map of the island of Kauai. You can see the peak, the highest point on the island, Mount Waialeale, is one of the wettest places on Earth, 400 inches of rain per year, as much as that. And then 19 miles away to the west, you'll get 20 inches of rain, and the eastern shore is kind of a mix. So incredibly diverse climate and resulting geography. So the area where these birds are found today is in the higher reaches. And the reason you don't find them more extensively in lower reaches is related to the fact that as climate change has been warming the atmosphere, the birds have had to seek refuge in these high, it's the highest, world's highest swamp on top of the island there. And you can see the dynamics here of how it's so wet there. The trade winds blow moisture. They hit this wall, 3,000-foot wall of Mount Waialeale, and it just rains and rains. So the problem is that mosquitoes carrying avian malaria were introduced in the 1950s, and the birds had no resistance to avian malaria, and they just drop like flies. Literally, a single bite can kill a bird. As climate warms, the mosquitoes are able to adapt to higher and higher elevations. So that's why the birds are found in these high places. This is a little video, just gives you a glimpse of what this forest area looks like.
1,000 in 2010 to a staggering 40 individuals in present time. KFBRP has a 2-part plan. The first is to collect all akikiki egg, chicks, and adults they can find. And the second is to bring those eggs, chicks, and adults into conservation breeding to provide an insurance population against immediate extinction.
So that's one strategy that's being used, collecting eggs, and the process of, these young people that spend weeks in a rainforest at high elevations where it's very cold is just amazing. The other thing that they are just starting to do, which is very exciting, is actually distributing mosquitoes that have been bred to be incompatible. So they release male mosquitoes and they breed, or they're able to breed, but they're with females, but their offsprings, or they're infertile. So essentially, they flood. The idea is to flood this extensive rainforest area with mosquitoes that will result in no offspring being born. And it's a technique that's being used other places around the world to address malaria impacts on humans. So it's proven technology. It has literally just started within the last 2 weeks on the island of Kauai. Here's a short video that gives a flavor of what that looks like.
IoT means incompatible insect technology. The idea is that you release male mosquitoes, which do not bite, onto the landscape that are reproductively incompatible with the wild females that are on the landscape. And because they're incompatible, when they mate, the eggs aren't fertilized and therefore they don't hatch and we don't have the next generation of mosquitoes. So when we get them on a helicopter, we have what's called the hopper sitting beside us. And the hopper is full of little cardboard pods that are biodegradable, filled with these male mosquitoes. And as we fly over what we call the treatment area, the area that's to receive these mosquitoes, we every 100 meters grab one of those little tubes and throw it, the cap off and throw it down a tube so that the mosquitoes start flying out of the tube as the tube falls to the ground. And we blanket the treatment area with 250,000 of these mosquitoes 2 times per week, so 500,000 male mosquitoes per week into the landscape, and hopefully they're gonna encounter a lovely lady and a mating will occur, and as a result, she will have infertile eggs, and we'll have those inviable eggs that are leading population suppression. So we know that this tool works to suppress mosquito populations, which will be for the benefit of all of us. Forget about the disease side of it. Who likes getting bitten by a mosquito? There is no concern for safety of this tool to other animals, to the birds themselves, to humans. And yes, in these global trials, efficacy has been well documented.
So I'll stop there. And essentially, it blows my mind, both that environment. We've been up there, we've hiked, we've been with some of these researchers and the work that they're doing. So I'm going to stop there. We have a few minutes left for questions, and I want to leave this slide up just for a little bit. Your questions and comments are welcome. And also, just to let you know, we are planning for another Leo lecture on April 10th that will focus on the work that our center is doing in the Great Lakes, most specifically focusing on the largest of the lakes, the biggest lake in the world, Lake Superior. So very much appreciate your interest, and I will stop sharing and look forward to taking questions for Taylor and me.
John and Taylor, we've got a lot of questions. Excuse me. And folks, so, if we don't get to your question, I know Taylor and John would be happy to field an email, or we can certainly get information to them as well if you email alum@hamline.edu. First question I'm going to ask, there's a few questions that have come up that are similar. So I'll ask this first one and just note that this has come up in a couple different ways. Have the recent cuts in federal funding had an impact on your programs? And if not, do you expect to see cuts? And there are a few other questions in the hopper that let me just quickly look here. A few other questions in the hopper, just sort of around, do you anticipate seeing an impact?
Yeah, that is a great question. And the answer is definitely yes. We, and I would say some of the partners we're working with most directly, they are in some ways more impacted than we are. Trying to think, and we're we have programs all over the United States. In Hawaii, our federal partners, Fish and Wildlife Service, is one of the ones that's not yet, but we expect will be on the chopping block. The funding that they will have to continue to support our work is a question. We work with NOAA in the Hawaiian Islands. There's a national marine sanctuary that surrounds most of the islands. It's called the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary. We've developed educational resources and kiosks that are used in their interpretive centers. As we all know, NOAA is one of the agencies that's really being threatened. So the short answer is most definitely that is going to have an impact on our work in Hawaii. In the what used to be called the Gulf of Mexico, we have a major project there that's totally funded by NOAA. And in Lake Superior, we've received considerable funding that originates from NOAA as well. So that's a big concern.
Are Hamline undergrads involved in any of the work that you guys talked about today?
Taylor started out working on this as an undergrad.
I sure did. I was an environmental studies and biology undergrad. But we do have student workers that have helped with many projects. I think most of them currently are working in the on a different project, Adopt a Storm Drain. They've been helping with that, but I know we've had students help with editing, videos and other content. So yeah.
Back to the student book project. Are the student books that are created available to everyone, or are they available just in the classroom?
Well, that's a great question. As of right now, they are just available in the classroom. We would like to share, but we're following the lead of our Indigenous partners who are more hesitant for a variety of reasons. One of which is their principal feels this kuleana or responsibility and worry that if she puts these books out, that she's saying this is the official Niihau language. And she's like, I don't feel that I have that responsibility. So in each of our books, we put a disclaimer that they're just for the school. We're not saying it's the end-all be-all Niihau resource, but we've got to do something. So we're doing this just for our school, and that's how we've kind of gotten around that. But we're getting more open to the idea of putting those legacy books out for the public. So,
and the content that's been put online that I was sharing a little bit of that that's not restricted, so people can access that.
We'll take two more questions. Both, I think, sort of get to sort of the broader nature of the work from CG. How is your center funded, and how is the work in Hawaii funded? You talked about that a bit.
Yeah. We're very entrepreneurial. We are essentially soft funded, meaning we develop our own funding, and it comes from a variety of sources. So federal agencies has been a significant source. We do a lot of work with grants that we write ourselves, and we also we work with sponsors. So we'll get organizations to sponsor our work. We're doing more of that in the Great Lakes region, Lake Superior, and that can be resorts or counties or businesses, hotels, and sometimes nonprofits that pay us an annual fee to essentially promote their brand through our educational kiosks and so forth. So those are, I would say, and foundation support is significant as well. So those are our main sources, both in Hawaii and elsewhere.
Do you have any plans for other projects, either in Hawaii or elsewhere? I know your reach is broad.
Yeah.
Do you have plans for other projects in Hawaii?
We have one of the things we produce, haven't done this yet in Hawaii, but in northern Minnesota, Lake Superior region, we've been producing hour-long public television documentaries, and we've done one on kind of celebrating the night sky and looking at issues related to light pollution, which actually has direct relevance to the seabirds, as Taylor was saying. So we have ideas about doing a comparable documentary in Hawaii, because the Taylor mentioned a little bit the importance of seabirds in traditional navigation. The Hawaiian culture has just incredible heritage of seagoing navigation. So the islands were first inhabited by humans. They were Polynesians who sailed in double-hulled sailing canoes from Polynesia, some 2,000 miles away across the open ocean, found their way to the Hawaiian Islands maybe 1,000 years ago. And there have been other groups that have come from the South Pacific over time as well, before Europeans first showed up, which was Captain James Cook in the late 1700s. And so the incredible traditions of navigation that have been developed by the Polynesians and by the Hawaiians that really rely on, a lot of it is related to understanding the stars and navigating by the stars, as well as currents and seabirds and winds. And it's an amazing process. So that's something we're envisioning. We have a network of these kiosks on multiple islands, and we're continually, every time we visit, which Taylor's over there several times a year. The rest of our team comes over usually once or twice a year, and we just continue to expand our relationships and networks with people. So new program opportunities are constantly bubbling up, and sometimes it's a question of how much can we do?
Yeah. Well, we're just at time, and actually, I'm gonna pull one other thread, even though we're right at time. So I'll tee this up with apologies for just going a beat over. But one of our attendees says the latest issue of The Atlantic has an article on Hawaii, and he's wondering if you've had a chance to had a chance to read it, and if so, do you have a reaction to the author's take on a movement to back a sovereign Hawaiian nation? That's kind of a big question to close with, but have either of you seen that article? I'm going to go look for it after this.
I did see it. I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
One of my friends who lives on Hawaii had shared it on Facebook, so that's how I and certainly have seen, and John, you can answer if you've read it or not, but we've seen the Hawaiian sovereignty movement. I don't think many of our friends and coworkers at the school, a lot of the Native Hawaiians that we've met and worked with are not necessarily a part of it, but there's a lot of Hawaiian protesting going on because of the Mauna Kea, the telescope they wanted to put on top of Mauna Kea on indigenous land. And so a lot of protests awoke in young people, especially around that, which somewhat relates to that Hawaiian sovereignty movement in terms of people's ideas, Native Hawaiians' ideas of what it means to be part of the US. So that's been very interesting.
I just add briefly, we do a lot of work on Maui, and many of you probably know the town of Lahaina was burned in a horrible wildfire. And that's another place this sovereignty issues have really bubbled up, because as they look to rebuild Lahaina, what role will Native Hawaiians have in that, in kind of establishing, I mean, it was the capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii for a period of time. So that issue comes up all over the place all the time.
All right, well, I think we'll call it there. Thank you so much, John and Taylor. Really appreciate your time today and sharing your expertise, and particularly the images and the sound of the work that you're doing. Like John mentioned, speaking about Lake Superior in just about 6 weeks. So we'd love to have folks join us for that one as well. You can find more information on our website, of course. And like I mentioned, if you have questions, I'll send an email to folks who are here today and would be happy to send questions to Taylor and John as well. I also would really recommend you take a look at the CGEE website. There's so much there. It's just really fascinating work. So thank you again to everybody who spent some time with us today. And John and Taylor, I will see you again. Thank you.
Aloha, everybody.